We have another email question, and we have a complaint from Christy.
I don't think it's a complaint. She's just supplementing one of our answers.
She goes, "Hi, Joe and Al. Love the show, especially the fact you address tax and investing issues at the same time, and all in a very straightforward and entertaining way. Thanks. I have a question, but wanted to add something to your answer on the October 23rd podcast about the benefits of a solo 401k. So she goes into a very good explanation of a solo 401k. I think we might have just shortcutted a solo 401k just through passing of maybe a recommendation that we made for a certain individual.
That could be.
I think our buddy Mac in Brookfield, Connecticut, about his wife being a dentist. And she has a solo 401k.
Right.
And so she went through a lot of great benefits of a solo 401k. So for those of you that don't know what a solo 401k is, Al, what is that?
Well, you can actually set up your own private 401k if you have your own small business and you don't have any other employees. Now, you can have your spouse can be an employee. That counts as one or solo. But if it's just you, then you can set up your own private, or we call it individual or solo 401k, and it's just an account. It's very simple. You don't need an actuary. You don't need these. There's not fees to set these things up or administer or even terminate. So very simple, and you can put a lot of money into it. $18,500 in 2018, and $24,500 if you're 50 and older.
And then
And that's the employer part. No, I'm sorry, employee. Sorry, employee part.
And then you can also put like a little profit sharing.
You can.
On top of it.
Yeah, and that's 20% of your profits. Unless you're an S corporation, then it's 25% of your salary.
And so with that being said, you could put a lot more than 18.5.
You can.
Or 24.
You can actually, if you look at the employee and employer part, you can actually put $55,000 into these plans, assuming that you have $275,000 of comp.
Of income.
That's what you would need to do that.
Right. So if you made $50,000, you couldn't shelter 18 and 18,
No,
right? 18.5,
no.
18.5. You have 18.5 is a dollar for dollar contribution on any 401k plan. So if you have a small business and you make $20,000, you can contribute $18,500 of almost your entire comp. You got to pay payroll comp, so I don't know what that computation is, but pretty dang close to 100% of your compensation.
Right.
And so what Christy was saying is that, hey, well, you guys kind of forgot to mention that you could put a lot more into it. And she's absolutely right, which we love the solo 401k for that fact, because what we see is that a small business might have a SEP plan. And so a SEP plan is just that same computation. It's a percentage of profits if I'm a solo practitioner or a sole prop.
Right.
But if I go a solo 401k plan, I can go dollar for dollar, and then I can add on top of that as my match, if you will, quote unquote, to get more money in up to that $55,000 limit.
Yeah, and I will say one more thing. If you're a business owner and you're 50 or older, you can also do the $6,000 catch-up on top of the $55,000, so you can actually put in $61,000 if you have enough income to be able to justify that.
She also went on to discuss another huge advantage is that there could be a Roth component of a solo 401k, which she is absolutely right.
We love that.
So you could go $18,500 into the Roth, and then you could put in the profit sharing or the match, and you could pre-tax that thing.
Yeah.
Right? So you could kind of toggle back and forth and get best of both worlds. You can get a tax deduction, and you can get a ton of money into a Roth 401k or a Roth plan.
And I think it's important to mention, Joe, that on the employee part, you can do a regular 401k or a Roth 401k. The employer part, the profit sharing part, that's always pre-tax. That's a traditional 401k part.
And then she goes on, finally, you can invest in a much wider range of investment options, including individual stocks and so on and so forth. So that is great information. Thank you, Christy. But now for her question.
Okay,
Alan.
good.
I have a solo traditional 401k. My husband is a W-2 employee and has both Roth and traditional options in his 401k plan. This year, he started contributing half of his retirement savings of the 24/5 into each of those after many years of contributing only to the traditional plans. He's 50, she's 45, and we're in the 24% tax bracket filing jointly. At current tax rates, we'll likely be in the 22% bracket in retirement So far, the vast majority of my existing retirement savings, amounting to about $165,000, like his, are traditional IRAs, traditional 401ks. Would there be any advantage for me also to put some of my contributions into the solo Roth 401k, especially when it comes to tax diversification in retirement, and given the fact that I'm younger? I love the idea of Roth. And ideally, I could invest relatively aggressively in a Roth and see a big benefit down the road, especially if tax rates go up in the future. Should I continue to contribute to my account based on my age and diversification situation, or should I not worry about that since we're putting half of my husband's savings in a Roth? Obviously, there are a lot of variables, so this kind of philosophical question. Oh, gosh, that was close.
You got it?
I got her done. About retirement income buckets and how much the spouse situation should inform a personal investment decision. Thank you very much.
Wow, that's a well thought out question.
Very well thought out, Christy. Alan, let me see your calculator real quick.
Okay.
So if I look at Christy, she's got $165,000 saved.
Right.
And she is putting $18,500 in. She's 45, and she does that for the next 20 years at 7%. That is going to be $1.4 million.
Right. And that's not even including the employer match.
That's not including
or profit share.
employer match, and that is not including her husband's contributions.
Correct.
So, Christy, just taking a look in the future here, right? If you continue to do the things that you're doing, as long as you have a globally diversified portfolio, and assuming a 7% rate over 20 years,
Sure.
that could be aggressive, that could be conservative, depending on what you want to do.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I think you're right on of looking at tax diversification. 2 reasons. Alan's going to give you the CPA math approach. I'm going to give you the real life approach.
Okay.
You're not going to remember the tax savings that you're getting today. You're 45 years old. You've got 20 more years potentially to work. And the couple of bucks you're saving in taxes because you went pre-tax versus Roth, in 20 years when this $1.4 million is all in a Roth versus a retirement account that's going to be taxed at ordinary income rates, you're going to be like, I am the happiest woman in the world. 22% tax bracket in the future. Well, tax rates, those rates are going to expire.
Right. That's how it's currently stated. So you're going to be probably in the
25% tax bracket.
Or maybe 28 even.
Correct. Now you got a 1.4. Let's say your husband is doing the exact same thing. He's got 1.4.
Yeah.
Now that's a pretty big number.
Right.
Right? So depending on what you want, and if it's all in deferred accounts, then you got... I love the fact that, all right, you're in the 24% tax bracket now. You think you'll be in the 22. The 22 is actually the 25, potentially.
Right.
Right? I like 24. I'd go Roth.
Yeah.
I would go full Roth on both, and then with your profit-sharing component of it, go pre-tax because you have to.
Yeah, I actually agree with you 100%.
Wow.
For the same reasons. So first of all, the CPA part of me says you're going to be in a higher tax bracket in retirement because that's what rates are scheduled to do.
Allegedly.
Well, that's what they are scheduled to do, but who knows what will really happen.
But she could blow up her investments.
Sure. So
that 1.4, she could be broke. So
yeah, well, it could.
With the assumptions. I'm just being compliant here,
Yes,
Alan.
very good. Okay. All right, let me try to spit out my comment.
Okay, sorry.
What was my comment? And anyway, so my comment is I completely agree. So the tax rate will likely, or at least as it's scheduled to be right now, you'll be in a higher bracket in retirement. But I also agree, Joe, with what you said, which is what we find is people that do the traditional, they save a couple bucks in tax, and then they spend it, and they don't remember it. And then in retirement, they got all this money, they got to pay all this tax. And so I completely agree with that thinking. The other part of this is the employer part, you call it the match and profit share. That part has to be pre-tax, so why don't you just do the employee part as a Roth? I completely agree with that.
So if you look at it, I'm not sure where Christy lives, but by putting the $18,500 pre-tax, she probably has a $5,000 tax savings.
Yeah.
Give or take.
Sure.
If she's in a higher state tax.
I seem to remember she's in Seattle.
Seattle, I don't.
Well,
hey.
then there's no.
It's a little rainy.
Yeah, and there's no state tax in Seattle, so it's only federal in that case.
Yeah, and then maybe she would like to come down to San Diego with her husband to visit, Joe and Big Al. And maybe ends up retiring in sunny Southern California.
Right.
And then you got 10% on the state.
Right.
Well, maybe Roth might be a pretty good idea. So she's probably saving $4,500.
Yeah. Well, you did.
You're not going to remember the $4,500 20 years from now when you got $1.4 million sitting in a Roth, allegedly, hypothetically.
And you bring up a good point, which is if you're in Washington State, which has no taxes, so you're not getting a huge benefit, just federal only. If you do move to another state, you want a little bit more sunshine in retirement, you're going to be paying taxes. So you would want more money in a Roth for that reason, too.
So, yes, I love the fact that tax diversification, for you saving that much, that you have excess cash flow, you see in the light a little bit, hey, I got $165,000. Splitting it half and half, you could do it that way. I thought Alan was going to give more of a CPA approach to say, well, what tax bracket are you in? Right? And
well, she already told us.
Well, no, not necessarily. We don't know what her taxable income is
No,
what I meant.
I'm just going with this at face value.
Right. So, but I guess a more maybe scientific approach could be this, Christy, if you really want to dive in the weeds and say, well, what's my taxable income? And then you look at, all right, well, how much should I go pre-tax potentially to put me in that lower bracket, and then put everything else into Roth? Mm-hmm. So you can kind of toggle this that way as well. Or you could say, you know what, I'm already saving for the future. And if I believe that the tax code is going to stay how it's written today, that tax rates will go up and the Roth will continue to be tax-free, then that's what I would do.
Right.
So
now, and the final point I want to say, and she already said this, which is if there's more money in the Roth and you have a diversified portfolio, naturally some of those components are going to be more aggressive. You stick those components in the Roth, obviously they're more volatile, they go up and down more, but over the long term, they tend to outperform, and you end up with keeping more of your investments that way.
I mean, so she's right on. She talked about asset location, putting higher asset classes in a pool of money that's going to grow tax-free. Congratulations. She looked at tax diversification. She looked at current rates versus future rates.
Yeah.
She's saving the maximum, and then she's also doing some homework on a solo 401k to say, hey, you know what? There's a lot more that you can potentially do with this.
Yeah.
I don't know.
One of the best questions we ever had.
Christy, if you,
I would say if you want a job,
hire,
Cindy, Christy, we need
we
an
might
advisors.
open an office in Seattle, Washington.